Is it wrong for telling my daughter she's a spoiled brat who doesn't understand hardship? Plus, all updates. Okay, so background. I, 40 male, am married to a 38 female. We met in high school. Wife's parents are terrible. Completely abused her until she moved out at 18. My wife has always tried to be a good mother and break the abusive cycle. We both have good jobs. They want for nothing. We tried not to spoil. They have chores. No, their manners. Are good kids in school. So my daughter came home one day and asked us to go visit her grandparents' house. We said yeah, because we thought she meant my parents. But no, she meant my wife's. My wife immediately said no. Then I backed her and said they will have no part in their lives. She said I was overreacting and that she deserves to meet all her grandparents. And we were being selfish. My wife was diagnosed with PTSD and still sees a therapist. Due to all the bullshit that she went through, it really annoyed me, and I sent her to her room. I talked to my wife and said that I should tell her what happened, so she understands why we are saying no, that her parents aren't good people. My wife was reluctant, but agreed as long as she didn't have to be there, so she wasn't triggered. I went to my daughter's room the next day, and I talked to her. I said, look, I understand you are upset, but we are not saying no just to say no. There is a lot you do not understand, but I'm going to explain it, so that maybe you understand more. Your mom's parents were abusive. She was humiliated daily, screamed and terrorized since she was 6 years old. Every moment and holiday was ruined by fear, and she almost died on Thanksgiving Day due to her stepfather. That your mom and her sister still suffer from the trauma, and that we will never have a relationship with them. And I hope that she understands now, something along the lines of that. I told her, and thought she understood. Anyway, it was my wife's birthday a week ago. And she doesn't like celebrating, honestly, but does it for us. It was actually a really great day. My wife's sister and our 2 other children and my whole family were there celebrating at our house. Until around 7 at night, a knock at my door, and my daughter went to answer the door. We figured it was a friend of hers. But when she came right back in the living room, it was my shitty mother-in-law and father-in-law. My wife and her sister both frozen, and they came in like they fucking owned the place, trying to be buddy-buddy. My wife asked them in a timid voice and said, "What are you doing here?" They said our granddaughter invited us. She then tried to speak up more and tell them they needed to go. But they wouldn't. I got up and went between my wife and them and said to leave. They are unwanted here. My daughter really stood up for them and said that she talked to them, and that mom just exaggerated what happened, and that they were good parents. That's when my father-in-law said, "That's right, whatever we did to you. Ungrateful kids, you deserve that." Pissed my wife off, and she shouted to leave. I went up with my dad and we were going to push him out. But he's 60 for 250 pounds, at least got us off him. And he pushed my wife into the wall. Her head hit straight back at the wall. She had to get stitches. As soon as that happened, me and my dad and brother forced him outside and said they needed to leave or we would press charges. Her mom kept saying that she was a good mom and my wife was dramatic and she just had bad children. Anyway, my mother took my wife to the hospital. Because we were still trying to get them to leave the driveway. My mother brought her there and back once they left completely. My wife didn't say anything the rest of the night, besides thanking my mother for the ride, then going to our room. Her sister was really freaked out too and left, right after hugging my wife. My children were in the living room, and I told my son and my younger daughter to go into their rooms. I needed to speak to their sister. I admit I lost it. I fucking screamed. Said she was so selfish, and I couldn't believe she did that. That she still got into contact after I explained what they did to her mom when she was younger. How I was honestly disgusted with her. She started to cry and say she genuinely thought I was exaggerating, and it would be good for them to get together. She said she got in touch with them on social media, and they seemed great. How they made everything seem not as bad, and she said she didn't think they could be that evil and be related to us. I told her there are evil people everywhere. We have just tried to shield her away. Because parents are supposed to protect their kids. I was so upset. I genuinely wanted to call her an idiot, but I didn't. But every move my wife did to move past her trauma was demolished by this idiotic decision. My daughter apologized, and I said, "Sorry, doesn't cut it." Her actions risked her mother's health and everyone's safety. My wife talked to her and said that she no longer trusts her, and how these are the consequences of her actions. For meddling in something that was not her business to meddle with. She has no more phone and no more visiting friends until she earns that trust again, and we can add a punishment we see fit. I've comforted my wife as much as I can. but she's not great. While I think honestly I went too easy on my daughter, I figured I should have other opinions. AITAH edit. To clear timeline, my daughter sought them out after I told her what happened during her mom's childhood. I asked, she said. She reached out first as well. My daughter is 16 years old. Update. More information. We did make a report and are pressing charges, and we'll be doing everything we can to get a restraining order. We didn't call the police because we live in a secluded area and it would take too long for them to get there. We deleted all my daughter's social medias, and I did look at her texts between her and the in-laws. She reached out first and kept pursuing them. There were 3 messages before that my in-laws ignored until they eventually responded. Also, that was not the first conversation we had with her about my wife's parents. It was just the first in detail conversation. I told her specific scenarios and events that happened without getting too graphic. But she and my other children always knew that their grandparents were bad. We had multiple talks growing up when we first started to explain why they only have one set of grandparents, unlike most of their friends, but we never said anything in specific details about the actual events. Only that their grandparents were bad people who hurt their mother and aunt a lot. She told me she's doing her best and feels bad for distancing herself from her daughter, but she's just extremely hurt. My wife's going into more therapy sessions than she normally does, and we have set an appointment for my daughter to see one as well. And we will try family therapy to get back to normal. Anyway, did not think this would get so many views. Thanks for all the advice. My wife's going into more therapy sessions than she normally does, and we have set an appointment for my daughter to see one as well. And we will try family therapy to get back to normal. Anyway, did not think this would get so many views. Thanks for all the advice. What do you guys think? Let's discuss in the comments. Follow for more stories.